At this stage we've got this form that allows a user to enter a new question. We've got some very simple validation on it. It doesn't do a lot, it just checks whether something has been entered into certain of the boxes. But what we need to do now is to be able to save the question. Now this year in console applications we've used really text files for saving. File open, file close, file get, file put, a few other commands. That would work, but it is more difficult to manually create the files in that way. We would have to check that everything's in the right place, we would have to know at what point in the file we are when we're reading from it, and it becomes quite complex, particularly as files get larger. So instead of doing that, we're going to use a database. The database is going to take away a lot of the hard work in managing the file. Now the database is actually just a data file. The thing that's going to do the work is the database management system. In our case we're going to use Microsoft Access. Microsoft Access will look after storing that data, and from our point of view we will just ask Microsoft Access for some data, or we will ask it to store some data. So we'll just make requests to it and it will sort it all out, which is great for us, nice and easy. Now we're going to use a database. We've created the database and you need to take a copy of it. To do that you need to go into the R drive. R drive computing, end of year, VB activities, and in here is a database called Quiz. You see it's got the little Microsoft Access icon, which is a ready key. That needs to be copied. Copy into your bin debug folder for this project. So my Visual Studio 2010 folder is on my H drive, so I've gone into it. I go into projects, quiz program, that's the name of my project, quiz program, bin, debug, and I'm going to paste it in here. I've got one from here, ignore that. I've just pasted it in, so I've got what you will have. So now I've got it here, I'm going to open it up and have a look at it. And when I open it, when I double click, it's going to open up Microsoft Access. Don't worry about Microsoft Access. You might have used it, you might not have, doesn't make any difference. We're not using Microsoft Access. We're just going to, the program will make some requests, so you don't need to worry about how to use Microsoft Access. But here, this is what you'll open up with, and here is my data file. It's called questions. And if I double click on it, you'll see it has some questions already in it. It's just to make your life a bit easier, and you don't have to type so much in. So we've got several columns. Question text is the question. We've got 4 answers. We've got which one is correct, 1, 2, 3 or 4. We've got a difficulty level, and we've got a category. These are all the fields that we put onto our form, the fields that the user could enter before. We've also got an ID column. Ignore it. That's something that's looked after by Microsoft Access. You don't need to worry about it. So I'm going to close that now. We don't need to worry too much about Microsoft Access. That was just so we can look at it. Now, going back to Visual Studio, what we need to do is create a link between this program and the database. Now, in console applications, we did that by using the file open command. By creating a file open, or using file open, we created a link between the program and a particular file. We need to do the same thing here, but it is much more, unfortunately, much more complicated. So we're going to give you the code to do it. Now that's fine, and you can do this in your project. You don't have to write every single bit of code yourself. You can use pre-written code to a certain extent. Obviously the whole project can't be written by someone else, but you can use some pre-written code just to make your life easier. So the code for connecting to the database isn't particularly complex, but it might take you a while to work it out and to code it, which is a bit of a waste of time when you could be doing something else. So we're just going to give it to you. So to do this, in Visual Studio, go to the Solution Explorer, to the project name, which is Quiz Program, and right click. The same way that we added a Windows form earlier, we're going to add an existing item. So existing item, and click. We now need to browse to the R drive, to computing, end of year, VB activities, so same place, and in here is Access Helper. Stuart updated it just a few days ago, and you need to select that and add. And what you'll see is it appears in the Solution Explorer. There it is. Now, Access Helper doesn't have a form associated with it. It's not a form, it's just a bit of code. So don't worry, we can't see any forms here for Access Helper. It's not meant to be. It's just code. So if I double click on it, I can see the code. And there it is. You don't need to understand it. Have a look through it if you want, but don't worry about it. But you do need to make one change. In this first part, the shared sub new, you need to go down to this line, the one that starts with builder data source. What this is doing is identifying the database we want to connect to. And at the moment, it's got a funny name in here, my database name. That's not the name of the database. The database name is quiz. So you need to change that to quiz and save all. And what that will do is allow us to create a connection to this database and to ask for data and to send it data. So we can save by sending it data, and later on we can run a quiz by getting the questions from the database. So that's what we'll look at in the next few videos.